Okay, let me break it down for you.
Judgment, prejudice, bias, it all still exists.
If I want to take this huge, overwhelming problem, I have to start with myself.
Finally clicked for me.
Compassion is a necessity.
I feel like Madonna. Yeah. On a Tuesday, the Saturday chasing me. Distracting me. I know that they never argued me.
Check. All right. Thank God that works. First of all. This was a DIY project, but that not might mean what you think it means. In this day and age, technology reigns supreme. In the global perspective, we have adapted into beings of comfort, a race of instant gratification. With a push of a button, we can now buy almost anything: clothes, hardware, groceries. But who created these things? Where did they really come from? The simple truth is that the majority has no idea. When you go to the supermarket and see a display for apples or pears, do you think about where it was grown? When you go to Ace Hardware to buy a new lamp, do you think about the steps taken to put it there for you on the display shelf? Do you think about the process? No. For right now, the link between the manufacturer and the consumer is hazy, separated by multiple layers of buffering designed for its cheap and effective process. We need to realize, no, we need to reconnect this stranded communication. We need to realize that these connections aren't exactly necessary to maintain our comforted existence of life. Do you want to reconnect with the manufacturers to know where your goods and services come from? It's a basic solution, actually. You don't. The answer is to take life into your own hands. This is the way humans used to live, but as the world's population grew, we created more and more ways for things to be given to us, and we started getting lazy. The problem is that most of us are no longer capable of doing anything ourselves. We have left the essentials, food, water, shelter, up to governments, which has led to large-scale privatization. In many countries, there are a handful of companies that control all of the resources, all of the natural resources. But this gives them the legal right to withhold essentials, for example, water, from people that really need it. This is happening in places already, today. In Nepal, after the recent earthquake, there were NGOs trying to get aid to some of the more remote areas, but they were being blocked due to sponsored efforts that were already in place. I would really like people to be aware of the fragile state of the system, because if something were to happen and we are unable to cope with the lack of any one of our essentials, there could be some very dire consequences. One issue that I would like to bring to light too is distance. Here's an example. You're at the breakfast table and take a bite of your cornflakes. As you're enjoying these delicious flakes, take a look at the cereal box. What you're eating is not from anywhere that is even vaguely close to you. They would have started off as corn, which is either from the USA, Brazil, or China. This corn would have been shipped to wherever it was that would process the corn into the flakes, but this would then have to be packaged into the packaging. This is usually made out of a cardboard box, but cardboard boxes, as many of you don't know probably, are made out of long-grain wood, which only grows, well, the wood used to make cardboard only grows in the USA, India, China, Brazil, Canada, Russia, Indonesia, Ethiopia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, or Nigeria. Some situations, the wood is shipped somewhere for processing, then shipped back to the original country that it came from. The wood is pulped, made into the cardboard box, and finally, after all of this, the cereal is packaged into a plastic bag, then into the box, and shipped to whichever supermarket you decided to buy it from. Now, this seems pretty unnecessary from some just burnt corn, but this is the way that we do things today. And through all this moving of resources, materials, and produce, we're using a very large amount of energy that could otherwise be put to much better use. The transportation industry accounts for 27% of all greenhouse gas emissions. And through localization, we could reduce that to almost nothing. Now, in the true spirit of anarchy, I firmly believe in the value of learning as many different skills as possible. Adaptation and diversity are going to become more and more important in today's world. But generally speaking, we're still stuck in post-industrial revolution mindsets. Education has a very large part to play in this. The public school system is geared towards making workers for factories. This is important right after the Industrial Revolution because there was all these factories that needed workers. So they decided to change the public schooling system to turn out people who could do one job menially for indefinite amounts of time and not question any order they were given. Now, this seems, in my opinion, to be quite an inefficient method of building a population, at least not one that's going to go anywhere. What we're lacking is learning to learn. To really move forward, we need to learn how to learn well. And if the trend continues and technology doubles every 50 years, we're going to be learning how to work a new phone every like 2 weeks. So, we need to institutionalize DIY mentality. We need to teaching young children to learn well how to see a problem and say, this doesn't work, and try to fix it. And most of all, to share what they have learned with other people. We need this now. My favorite example of large-scale DIY is open source. Wait, next one. Yeah. My favorite example of large-scale DIY is open source. Open source is a big movement in which is DIY-based. There are people doing amazing things just through the open sharing of information. It's basically where you get together with others in a forum and share difficult-to-get information, such as insider secrets or trade secrets. And this has allowed people to do just absolutely ridiculous things. For example, developing nuclear fusion in their basements to beating NASA in aeronautics. Pretty impressive stuff, considering it's just like just randoms. But many people don't know, but even Steve Jobs created Apple when he was part of a DIY initiative that was working on computing back in the 80s. In all of these cases, the result was always that they were able to accomplish more with less funding and less time than any one of their government-run counterparts. But at the end of the day, it's really about the freedom that DIY allows you to have. It's to take matter into your own hands. In this day and age, information on any topic is simply a few mouse clicks away. We have the entire horde of human knowledge at our fingertips, and we use it to look at cat videos. The future is here, so why aren't we part of it? You tell me. Why aren't we living in eco-friendly houses that are 100% self-sustaining and off the grid? We have the means and the technology, and best of all, it's 100% free. Well, I think that this is the most important aspect of DIY. It's the mentality of taking the initiative or inspiration and trying your hardest to achieve that goal. In this modern world, we work our minds, not our hands, and we need to work both equally. I grew up in a culture where DIY is commonplace. Indonesia is a hotbed of junk maintenance and do-it-yourself technology. This allows for a lot more creative freedom with what people are able to do with just the minimum in resources and funding. If living in Indonesia has really taught me one thing, that if something works, then use it. I'm not saying don't do your research, but if something is proven to work, then there's no reason not to utilize it. My interest in craftsmanship really stemmed from my father. A man of many virtues, he encouraged me from a very young age to make things. He would provide the tools and the materials, but never tell me what the end result had to be. This instilled in me a passion for creating something from nothing. And so I knew from the beginning of the Greenstone that I wanted to create a musical instrument. But as soon as I approached this project, I realized I was going to be working on a very technical piece of hardware. Very technical. So I decided that I would learn the process. I would learn a skill that I would be able to take with me onwards in life, something that I could use. And for me, this meant going to the people that I knew had the most experience in building instruments and learning from them through a project, which is here. And it works. But Which brings me to trade secret number 1. Always learn from other people's trial and error. So with the help of my mentor, Philip, I started by sourcing wooden materials and, yeah. I started by sourcing wooden materials, and it took me a few weeks to get all my pieces together and to get all the advice I needed to get confident about starting this project. I tried to do as much of the work as I possibly could, but at the end of the day, I really wanted to learn how the process was done correctly, as opposed to delving into something that I was bound to screw up. So using online sources and advice, I began by shaping the body, which is those cardboard cutouts over there. Next to that, just don't look at that. There are no other photos, I had to. I started by shaping the body, and then afterwards, I took it to a woodworker to get the routing done, which is the cutting of all the slots where all the bits go in. The neck was made in Solo by a local luthier so as to use wood that is from Indonesia and to use, Indonesian skills, pretty much. Afterwards, I took it to an instrument wiring expert in Denpasar to get the assembly done. I wanted to see how the internals on a bass work, so I stayed with him throughout the entire process to learn as much as I possibly could. 2 months after I started, at the end of the build, I feel that I did accomplish my goal. I now feel that through the work I did do and the observations I made, I now feel as though I could accomplish this on my own. I feel as though I could build this instrument from scratch, and that was what I wanted. I wanted to learn a skill, and it worked. So, people say they want to change the world. They're willing to spend hours of their time researching statistics, telling themselves that we're no longer able to afford the lifestyles we live. The fact that we're going to run out of one of our most widely used resources, oil, is common knowledge. But I don't think people really appreciate what that means. At this point in time, if we ran out of oil tomorrow, let's say, the whole world would go into a state of shock. Countries completely willing to decimate each other to get to a resource that we're so reliant on. Seeing how people behave and seeing what people are capable of in times of desperation, I don't doubt that we could revert back to some more archaic social systems. I'm not saying that this is for sure, that we will tear each other to bits, scrambling to reach the last bits of natural resources. But do you really think that people will be willing to watch their loved ones perish, waiting for somebody else to do something? It's up to each and every one of us to be prepared for anything. I think DIY is a good way of being prepared. It's best to treat the problem, not the symptoms. The problem being that we are reliant on a system that is not going to last. So to help you remember, you could think about DIY in these 2 easy steps. Step 1, do it yourself. Literally, you're capable of so much more than you think. Step 2, there's no step 2. So I think it's time I mention something. Throughout this presentation, I've been saying we a lot, but this is not a we situation. It would be way easier to swallow if it was. If we have to do something, then we'll all sit here waiting for somebody to lead us in doing that thing. It's a you situation. And it's your fault if nobody did anything, because you didn't do anything either. It's not up to the group, it's up to the individual. And the only way we can cause change is to all take it upon our personal selves to be the change. So I want to challenge you, all of you change makers, anybody watching this video, live what you know to be the best course, not for yourself, but for your children and their children. The future is daunting already, but please don't make it any harder to live in than it already will be. And I want to finish with this. Inaction is the plague of the human race. There's an acute need for people to realize that the only person that will ever change the world is themselves. It always has been and always will be up to you. Thank you.